Hi sewers, I'm Carrie and welcome to Sew Darn Fun. This is a channel all about quality clothing alterations, pattern reviews, and useful sewing how-tos. Today we're going to talk about making that modesty panel. This goes along with the previous video regarding making the loops and laces, so you don't want to go anywhere. Today I'm going to try to make this a quick video because it shouldn't be that time consuming to learn how to make that modesty panel that goes behind loops and laces should you decide that you want a modesty panel. First of all, you need to determine what the opening is going to be at the back of your dress. Keeping in mind that when those laces are tightened, that opening to the dress will very easily get small. So let's pretend that our opening to our dress is 3 inches at the bottom, 6 inches at the top, and 12 inches long. Of course, at the bottom, it might come all the way together. So we're just kind of estimating maybe a 2 or 3 inch width at the bottom of that modesty panel is going to be appropriate and work well. I'm going to draw those dimensions on the fabric plus 1/2 inch for each seam allowance. So if you need to have the finished width at the top of your modesty panel be 6 inches, you're going to add 1/2 inch on one side, 1/2 inch on the other, so now it becomes 7 to make up for that seam allowance. Same with the length. If you want a 12-inch length modesty panel, you're going to add 1/2 inch at the top, 1/2 inch at the bottom. Now you need 13, and then of course the measurements at the bottom. So our modesty panel today, we will cut it out to be 7 inches wide, 13 inches long, and at the bottom it will be 4 inches wide. So draw that out on your fabric or on your paper. You need 2 layers of fabric with these same dimensions. So once you get those cut out, you're going to interface those pieces. I realize that sometimes we don't have things on hand and we need to make this quick. If you don't have interfacing, it's okay. Just go ahead and proceed through the rest of the steps. You could also put multi-layers of fabric in there to try to build up some of the stiffness. What we're looking for is structure in our modesty panel. So let's pretend you do have interfacing. I use a fusible interfacing. We're just going to go ahead and interface the entire width of that. I know there's the controversy, do I cut off the seam allowances or leave it on? For simplicity, we're just going to leave it on. So I'm going to fuse both sides of the modesty panel on the wrong sides of each of those pieces of fabric. If there's pieces of that interfacing that kind of stick over the edge, I don't want to get it on my iron or on my ironing board, so I'll just shave off those pieces a little bit. So once those pieces are fused, we need boning. I use this kind of boning. It's called Ridgeline boning. I use 1/4 inch wide. I'll try to get a close-up so that you can see what it looks like. It has like teeny plastic strips that are woven in, and so it's very easy to sew over this rather than the thick plastic stuff where your sewing needle would have to pierce it if you were to sew into it. I like the Ridgeline. It just really works well. It's soft and I can sew through it. So that would be the minimum structure. If you have a very wide modesty panel or a very long modesty panel, you might want to put 3 strips that go up and down, 1 on each side and 1 in the middle, and maybe 2 through different parts during the middle, like divided into thirds. But today, for simplicity's sake, once again, we're just going to put 1 through the middle, and then we're going to outline our modesty panel in the boning. You need to draw your seam allowances back onto one piece of one of your modesty panels. If your ink disappeared, if your chalk disappeared when you pressed on that interfacing, you'll need to redraw them on. It just makes it a lot easier to have it drawn on there. So lay your boning inside that seam allowance that you drew. First cut your top piece and then both side pieces the same length. Don't worry, these pieces will overlap each other. And then last but not least, the middle one that goes across the middle. If you need your boning to be straight because it's bendy, just iron it. So across the top, let's start with that one. Place a piece of that boning inside the seam allowance and stitch on the very edge of it all the way from side to side. Then you're going to sew the other side of that very same boning. So both the edges of that boning are sewn down. Now you're going to take a piece that goes up and down along the vertical side of your modesty panel. Lay your boning over the other boning. Yes, you can layer them over the other boning and sew all the way around that piece that you just laid down. Do the same to the bottom. Lay down a piece of boning so you can sew it on and cut it as you get to it, or you can pre-cut it, however you want to do it, and sew all the way around the perimeter of that narrow piece of boning. And then once again, you're going to do that for the last side. And you'll see that as you connect those corners, that piece really becomes one with itself as far as its structure and its rigidity. Last but not least, you're going to take a piece and put it across the middle of that modesty panel and sew it on. Now you're doing this only on one of the fabric pieces, not both. When all the boning is applied, come back with your scissors and cut off any little edges that are sticking out. So once that is done, you need to take your other modesty panel piece and put right sides together, starting at a couple inches up from the bottom edge on one of the long sides. Let's start and sew down, and then sew all the way to the edge, and then come in and sew the bottom edge, then sew up the side and around the top, then come down the side you started on and leave a couple inch gaps so that you can turn your modesty panel right side out. So once you've got that sewn all the way around, take your modesty panel, turn it right side out. I'll show you how to turn the corners of that fabric in so that it's easy to turn it right side out so you don't have all that bunching in the corner. Oh my goodness, I have to laugh at myself while I watch this footage as I wrestle and wrestle trying to get this seemingly simple project turned right side out. I've got a couple problems here. One is that I probably should have left the opening, a good 3 to 4 inches so I could turn it out easily. The other problem is I've had surgeries on both my thumb joints, which leaves me weak in grip and strength. But thank God, no pain. Once it's turned right side out, you'll want to press it. When you press it, that opening that you turned it right side out through, you're going to press those edges under the same amount as what your seam allowances were. I use a 1/2 inch seam allowance for my modesty panel. You might use a different amount. I didn't mention that earlier in the video, but you can use whatever seam allowance you feel comfortable with. But I don't know that I would go less than a 1/4 inch, maybe not even less than 3/8 inch. I feel comfortable with 1/2 inch. Once you're done pressing that, you have an option here how to close up that opening. I just top stitch with my sewing machine. It's not going to show, so I'm usually not worried about it looking perfect. But if you don't want it to show, you may feel free to thread up your needle and hand stitch it closed. And now your modesty panel is done. So now what you can do is you can tack it in to one of the edges of the dress. I usually tack the left side, making sure that it's going to sit straight in the back of the dress. The wider that the dress spreads apart at the top, the more you need to make sure that when you put it in, pin it on first, maybe have the person wearing it to make sure that the top edge isn't going to slant up or down, that it goes straight across. Just tack it in one side. You don't need to put any snaps on the other side like you see in some of the ready to wear, because once that dress is cranked tight and those loops and laces are pulled tight, that loose edge isn't going to be floating around. It's not going anywhere. It's going to stay put. So don't worry about trying to put a snap on there and having to always match that same exact tightness so that that snap can get snapped. Just let it free float. It will be just fine. That is how I do a modesty panel. See, the video was short, and now you know all you need to know to finish up the loops and lace project that you're doing, and now you can put a modesty panel in the back of that. Thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoyed my video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ask me a question. Please come back for other videos. I truly enjoy your watching. I hope you have a blessed day. See you next time.